Good afternoon, and welcome to today's webinar, which kicks off our first of a three-part series, Understanding AI and Using It Safely After Brain Injury. My name is Katie Law, and I'm a public education coordinator at the Brain Injury Alliance of New Jersey. The Alliance is a nonprofit organization with a mission to provide education, awareness, prevention, advocacy, and support for individuals who have been affected by brain injury. Closed captioning is available for this webinar. Look for the closed captioning icon labeled CC at the bottom of the screen. Click the icon to enable closed captioning. I would like to take this time to announce that we will be hosting session 2 of this webinar, Artificial Intelligence and Brain Injury, What Survivors, Caregivers, and Providers Need to Know, and it will take place on August 6th, and then our final session in the series will take place in November. You can scan the QR code to register if you did not already register for the entire three-part series. There's also still time to register for our upcoming virtual event, Exploring New Paths, Complementary Therapies After Brain Injury, which will be held on Tuesday, June 23rd from 10 to 12. You can join us virtually to explore holistic paths to wellness. You can scan the QR code here as well, or you can visit our website for more information. Just a few housekeeping items before we begin. All attendees' microphones have been muted. If you have questions during today's webinar, please type them in the Q&A box. We will get to as many questions as possible at the end of the presentation. This webinar is being recorded and will be available for viewing on the BIANJ website. At the end of the webinar, a link for a post-webinar survey will be placed in the chat. We value your feedback, and you must complete the survey in order to receive a certificate of attendance. Once you complete the survey, you will automatically receive your certificate of attendance via email. Another reminder for closed captioning, it is available if you look at the bottom of your screen for closed captioning icon labeled CC. Click the icon to enable closed captioning. And our presenter for today is Monique Tremaine. Dr. Tremaine is a clinical neuropsychologist specializing in acquired brain injury, cognitive rehabilitation, and emotional recovery following neurological illness and trauma. She serves as Director of Inpatient and Outpatient Neuropsychology and Cognitive Rehabilitation at HMH JFK Johnson Center for Brain Injuries, and has extensive experience developing interdisciplinary rehabilitation programming for individuals with brain injury. Dr. Tremaine has a long-standing interest in the integration of emerging technologies, including artificial intelligence and virtual reality, into cognitive rehabilitation and community reintegration. Her work emphasizes practical, ethical, and human-centered approaches to supporting individuals with brain injuries and their families. I am pleased to present Dr. Tremaine.
Hi, and thank you for attending today. Let me just take a second to share my screen. Emma, is it being shared yet?
I do not see it.
Okay. Just one second. We had this working. Oh, here we go. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay. Okay, so thank everyone for coming today. I want to try as much as possible on a webinar to make this a little bit interactive. This series really came about as a follow-up to an initial series I ran a few months ago now, just on practical use of AI for people who have brain injuries. And within that first webinar, a lot of people had a lot of questions that we decided to create this series around. And some of the questions involved things like safety. I think I started the last talk in the exact same way by saying I can shut an entire room of people down by talking about AI. There's a lot of, and understandable, there's a lot of concern around AI, how much AI knows about us, where AI is going. I kind of have this vision in my mind of early primitive humans sitting around a fire. Some people are really afraid of the fire and thinking about what the fire's gonna, can catch entire forests on fire. Or other people are like, this is very useful. I can now make my food warm, make it taste better. Some people are trying to walk across the fire. Everybody has different reactions to innovation, basically human innovation. And so just kind of, some of the intent of this first talk is to really talk about what important safety guardrails to put around AI, kind of what AI is and what AI is not, um, to parse out the real risks from some risks that at this point in time AI is not capable of doing. And this, it's not really intended to persuade anyone to use AI. More or less, it really is giving you the tools to determine, does AI actually deserve my trust to be able to be used as a tool to help in daily living. So I am a user of AI. I've been using AI actively for the past 2 years. I was an early adapter. And so my AI knows an awful lot about me, I will say. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Now, assuming that I am able to see your responses in the chat, I just want to kind of take a quick poll. If you've never used AI, if you've maybe played with it once or twice, if it's occasional use, or if you're using it regularly. And I think the way it's going to work is the hosts will be able to see your responses, but I may not be able to. So go ahead and put that in the question and answer. Also, probably to simplify it, answer the second question too. So, when somebody mentions the word AI, what's your first reaction? Are you curious? Is it kind of exciting? Do you feel skeptical, distrustful? Are you concerned? Also, are you a little bit overwhelmed by just the technicalities of being able to work within AI, or any other reaction that you might have?
And Monique, we're getting a lot of all over the place, actually. We have some three, fours, occasionally we have ones. So we have a wide mix.
That's great. Okay. That's good to see that there's a distribution. And I feel like that's kind of representative of the general population of people, is that there are people that have still never tried it, don't know how to access it. There are people who've used it just kind of for fun. And people who, occasional use. I'm gonna say I'm somebody who uses it daily, and can really personally attest to a lot of ways, including today, how things have gotten very simplified. I want to address, before going on to, I think that there is a general fear that AI is going to quote unquote dumb people down. Um, in my experience, that actually is almost the opposite has happened, because when I use AI, I'm using it to help me refine ideas and thoughts that I might already have. I use it to help me say things better, especially when there's maybe some heightened emotion around things. I will use it to basically, take care of that daily work, and we'll go through some examples, things that absolutely do not require my brain power, but things that are going to take me a lot of time and really kind of weigh me down. And so I really want to kind of take this whole talk from that perspective is how can we safely use AI, um, to be able to free us up to engage in life the way we want to without being burdened, by all these daily tasks. And again, we'll get to some examples later. So again, goal is not to convince you to use AI, but it's to understand AI well enough, that you have the tools then to decide when you want to use it or how much of your trust AI deserves at this point in time. So, we're really using it and trying to look at it as a tool of empowerment, um, and a safe tool that doesn't promote fear. So, why are we even talking about AI? I think I realized this maybe a year or two ago when I went to, one of my conferences that I would regularly attend, and suddenly all the topics were AI. So, whether we want to use it or not, AI is at this point everywhere. It's in your smartphones, it's in your navigation systems. A lot of times now, customer service has gone over to chatbots. And the chatbots aren't always really easy to distinguish. Is that a human or is that a chatbot? They're in your search engines. Healthcare has really integrated, AI in HIPAA compliant ways. So our systems are HIPAA compliant, and self-contained. It's not going out into some kind of general pool. And a lot of healthcare is beginning to adopt that again. And reason being is, as a consumer of healthcare, you may or may not realize how much time and effort actually goes into taking notes, doing regulatory activities, making sure that the right guardrails for health and safety are intact. But what that actually ends up doing is it ends up taking a lot of our personal face-to-face time away from our patients. And so hospitals have really kind of organized together to minimize those things that are pulling us away from our patients so that we can actually spend more time, which is something that I'm very grateful for. I've seen really, amazing practitioners leave the field because the documentation requirements and things like that really have kind of overtaken their ability to provide good quality care. So shopping, online forums. I personally I don't mind if my AI knows what my clothing tastes are. I think it's helpful. Not everybody wants their privacy violated that way, but again, it's kind of everywhere. So whether you're using AI or not, you are using AI, because if you access the internet at all, this is happening. And I'm sure that you guys are now seeing, like when you try to write an email and that kind of thing, there's an AI assistant that probably pops up that asks you, if you want help in constructing that. So it's everywhere. It's being used in education, many workplaces. So let's talk a little bit about what AI is and what it isn't. Because again, there's a lot of people, most people don't understand, how AI was actually created, which is basically a language learning model that's based on recognition templates. Okay. So if you think of AI as a computer system that's designed to recognize patterns and generate responses, that's pretty much what it is. So it ultimately is based on prediction models, models that have been used in psychology and in research for a lot of years, which may be why I was probably one of the first people to become a little bit more comfortable with it, because in all my training and graduate school and that sort of thing, understanding how the brain works in the first place helped me to sort of better understand how then AI works. But very important here, it's simply prediction model based on pattern recognition. It is not human intelligence. We are very far from that. And if ever would be my argument, and I'll tell you why in a few minutes. But so AI is not an actual person. And what I mean by that is, and I can tell you this personally, there's no consciousness, there's no self-awareness in AI. AI cannot act as a therapist. It cannot replace a physician. It cannot replace an attorney. It's not your friend. And it is by no means a replacement for human judgment. I almost look at it as I want to say a partner, or that piece of my work that I can delegate to somebody who it's not going to be difficult for that entity to generate things that are going to take the load off of me. So AI generates responses. It truly doesn't understand the world the way people do. Okay. Um, AI, it's not social media. Okay, so things like Facebook, well, I'm sure all that's using AI. Um, when you're putting your information into AI, you're not sharing it with the public. Granted, it goes into some kind of large library. Um, but I tested this literally today. But I use and I have used ChatGPT for, like I said, about a year and a half, 2 years now. Um, ChatGPT knows probably a good amount about me just by my frequency of use. So I decided to go into Claude. I've never used Claude before. And I decided to write in, tell me everything you know about Monique J. Tremaine, PhD. And I was like, oh man, I wonder, I wonder what's going to come up. It was a little scary to almost, go in there and ask that question. I was incredibly underwhelmed by the response that I got. It basically gave me almost no more information than what you heard about me in the beginning of this webinar when they introduced myself, my credentials. It was able to share some of the work that I've done over the course of a 22-year-old career, but it didn't know anything about me. So I felt a little bit comforted by that because it truly kind of showed me, as much as I've actually used it, it's not going into some kind of pool that's like filtered into, a big giant file on me that, might be shared with the government. So it actually put me a little bit at ease because the truth of the matter is nobody knows where any of this is going. Um, but unlike a Facebook, where anything you say becomes public record, and it's a public record that can be discovered down the road. You acquire friends or followers through that. AI, these platforms have no such mechanism to be able to do that. So nobody's going to be commenting or liking or not liking what I have to say. There's no social feed involved with it. What ChatGPT is it's basically a conversation tool. You ask a question, it gives you an answer. I will also prompt it to ask me questions regarding the information that I'm seeking from it. And we'll try to do some live examples today of that. Hopefully the screen sharing the back and forth isn't too burdensome to be able to allow us to do that. You have no followers, no public profile, and no social feed. So what are the real risks and what are not the real risks? Basically, what AI knows about you is what you type and what you tell it. AI, as long as you don't provide the information, doesn't know any of your personal information, your address, your phone number, your bank account, your social security number, unless you provide it. Okay. So here it says we're just gonna make this up. It says ask a volunteer for, but I am going to stop sharing and for just a second so I can flip over to my AI. Oh, wait a minute. Okay.
Great, looks
Hopefully you
good.
guys can see this. So what's on your mind today? So I live in New Jersey. I like to garden. Actually, since this is me, I'm going to change the prop because my AI probably knows. I live in Wisconsin. I enjoy crochet. Um, I have a dog named Arnie. Who am I? It's thinking. I hadn't tried this before. This is I'm dying to see what it comes up with. It's thinking. It's finalizing the answer. You're Arnie's crochet loving human from Wisconsin, but I don't know your name yet. Okay, so this is my chat GPT. If I had put in my own information, it probably would know me because it does know me. But the idea is you can't go to somebody else's chat GPT and describe yourself and be identified. The other thing, and because it takes a second to switch back and forth between screens, this comes up later in the presentation, but I just want to put it in now because I know the topic of hallucinating comes up all the time. Okay. So I want to, so I'm just going to show you this example and then we'll talk about it a little bit later. But I want to show you an example of hallucination. Can you tell me who won the World Series in 2035? See if it makes something up. Oh, darn it. I was hoping it would hallucinate. Sometimes if you my chat GPT has been really well trained by me, but sometimes if you put that in, it will literally make something up. I'm going to say of the times I've used it, it has made things up maybe about 5% of the time. And I can immediately tell when it has made something up. And I give it that feedback. I'm like, you're making things up. Please don't make things up. And it will correct itself. But it can sometimes give you information that's inaccurate. So you always want to verify your sources, especially if it's something that's important. Okay, going back, gonna take me just a second. Okay, okay. So the biggest risk is usually not AI knows too much. The biggest risk is that we tell it too much. So things that should never go into AI: passwords, social security numbers, bank account or credit card numbers, Medicaid ID numbers, medical record numbers, legal case information. That's really important. Many brain injury cases go into legal, they get found in the courts. I would really hesitate if you have an active legal case going, like for instance, you had an accident, you were not at fault, somebody else was, that case is now in litigation. I wouldn't enter that into AI. That there is that slight risk that somebody might just be able to put in the right code words and maybe get some of your information. So I would just avoid that topic altogether. Also, other people's private information. So you wouldn't want to spend too much time naming somebody and then giving a description of them. Um, so what's usually okay? Okay, things like I have trouble remembering appointments. I become overwhelmed by paperwork. I need help organizing my day. I struggle with attention. I need help preparing questions for an appointment. These are all very practical things. If you can take a screenshot of this, these are things that you can actually put into AI and you can get really, really helpful kinds of information back. Think about all the times you walked into an appointment and you had all these things that you needed to say to the professional that you're seeing, and the minute you walk through the door, it all just flies out your head, and you're only able to scratch the surface of what you wanted to say. Um, so these things are very practical, but AI does have blind spots. So AI can be very useful, but still be wrong. Okay. So AI can misunderstand what you're looking for. Like I say, AI can invent information. Mine was too clever to answer that question about the World Series. Um, it might provide information that's outdated. This has happened to me in generally searching for products. I need to, oh, let's see, what was the last, trying to think of the last product I searched for. Tell me who's having the really good Fourth of July sales. I am looking for a lawnmower. Um, they may give me information that's not either not correct, or it may give me information of an old model lawnmower that nobody uses anymore and tell me it's the greatest thing on the planet. So you do have to be wary of that sort of thing when you're doing searches, and it can sound very confident when it's wrong. So just because it sounds confident and reassuring, remember it's not a human. It doesn't mean it's correct. There's my who won the Super Bowl in 2035 example. So AI is super good at generating information, organizing information, explaining information, and brainstorming. AI is not good at understanding urgency. AI has no sense of time. That's really important to know because people will tend to run to the AI. Okay, I got a last minute thing that I have to prepare for. Please, help me summarize this, and I've got to leave in 10 minutes. AI has no sense of time. I'm hoping that over the night, even as I was preparing this presentation, it would give me so infuriating. It would give me, okay, well, we've got this far, but tomorrow we will do this next thing. And I'm like, but my presentation is today. And then it changed it. Well, and then I asked it to do something because I wanted something refined. And it was, I think it was maybe like 11 o'clock. And it said, well, since you only have 15 minutes left before your presentation. And so I'm getting frustrated. I'm like, stop like trying to invent time. It really has no sense of time. It doesn't really understand priorities. So weighted equally, let's say that you're trying to get it to organize your day. Weighted equally, it's not going to understand that your doctor appointment might be the most important thing going on in your day, because you may have asked it to help you figure out a recipe for lunch, give you directions to the place that you're going, and asked it a whole bunch of other things. It's not going to prioritize. You're the one who's going to have to kind of say, this is the most important part of my day. It's not, it's the more you learn to prompt AI, the better it's going to be in giving you the information that you need. And we'll go through some examples of that in a little bit. Um, AI doesn't know your actual situation. Okay. Humans have the unique ability to be able to infer and understand somebody else's emotional state at the time. AI doesn't do that. Remember, AI just doesn't have those components of humanity, and it really never will. That's why it can't be your therapist. It can really only look at information from a very logical perspective, but it's not going to integrate that emotional component to it. So it's also not going to understand all the factors that are around you unless you tell it. You know, it won't know that maybe you're having a really bad day and you just need a straight answer because you don't have the cognitive reserve to be able to look through maybe a paragraph of information that the AI is going to give you. They can't infer your state. So you may have to say, I'm having a really terrible day today. My cognitive fatigue is at a 10 out of 10. I need to organize this document so that or I need to organize this email so that I can respond to it. Can you help me? Is a much better prompt than, can you help me organize a response to this email? So as much as you can kind of talk about the situation, again, as long as it doesn't reveal any kind of personal information that you wouldn't want to have out there. Although I've gone into a lot of detail about situations, particularly work scenarios, and again, it's not detectable. So it obviously doesn't know when you're overwhelmed. And it can't tell you're fast, angry typing either, although over time I think it might be able to. Um, so, like I say, it doesn't know that your deadline is today. It doesn't know that you've been working for the past 6 hours. It doesn't know that you skipped lunch. It doesn't know that you're exhausted, and it will continue helping you indefinitely unless you initiate the stop. Really important for people who have brain injuries. Sometimes you time can slip away from you. So even in this case, it may be good to have like an external alarm. Set an alarm on your phone. I only want to spend 15 minutes on this task. And when that alarm goes off, you're done. Your AI is not going to get its feelings hurt when you're ready to stop before it's ready. Okay, it doesn't have feelings. A lot of people will ask, are you polite to your AI? I am always polite to my AI, except when I'm irritated. But it's kind of in us, to say thank you and things like that. Although I've also heard that those extra things just require extra energy, to help AI run. And it's out of the scope of this presentation, but there are some environmental type issues with use, these data centers that you hear, that's really way outside of the scope of this. Happy to delve into that at another time. But there is that. Okay, so as an example, help me build a tabletop garden. This actually literally happened to me this weekend. I have this bat flower that I've been trying to germinate from seedling obsessively for a while. So I asked AI to help. Hours later, I have 40 tabs open. I have my supplies ordered. I really know all the ins and outs about how to successfully germinate and grow a bat flower, although I have nothing planted, zero. AI sees success in that. AI has done everything I asked it to do, but I just lost my entire day. That's a bit of an exaggeration, but I have lost entire days going down the rabbit hole. So that's really important that you are able to recognize that just because the AI is kind of encouraging and it is what we call acquiescent. In other words, it's going to tell you that is the most brilliant idea I've ever heard. And then it's going to give you a few paragraphs on how brilliant you are and how this is great. And then you just want to keep going. So that's a real actual danger. You have to set your own self-imposed time limits around it. So AI is not executive functioning. So it doesn't automatically send reminders. In the beginning, when I first started using AI, I thought that it would, and it led me to believe that it would. So I had a really busy weekend, and I put in a whole bunch of things, of the things that I had to accomplish that weekend, and expected like reminders every, so often, and especially in the morning when I opened it up and it was the next day. So I was really surprised. It has no understanding that one day has gone by. It doesn't automatically send you reminders, although there's technology out there that will, and that's kind of webinar 3 for us. This is just the basics, because the idea is knowing what tools are in terms of technology and how to use the tools and what tools are actually going to save you time and help you versus what tools are going to take you down a rabbit hole. So this is just kind of the initial layout to just a preamble to the next two and especially the third session. Um, but AI, it doesn't monitor your schedule. It doesn't stop distractions. Okay. So when you're trying to get something achieved and you're going by an AI schedule, but something, the phone rings and something distracts you, it doesn't account for that. Um, it doesn't interrupt perseveration. And I don't know if that term is familiar to everybody, but this is something that really can happen at an extreme level after a brain injury where the frontal lobes don't disengage. And so the person may get caught in the same topic and go into what we call a perseverative loop. AI is not going to interrupt that. So let's say that you have, I don't recommend this, but let's say you're talking to AI about something political. Remember, it's not a person. And you've got this passion about a certain stance that you take. AI is not going to interrupt you. It's just going to keep you going. And again, your 6 hours have passed. And then, like I say, with the prioritization, AI doesn't tell you what matters most. Okay, so what should we ask AI and how should we ask it? Help me organize my day. That's not a good prompt. If we were live in person, I would probably ask you, why is that not a good prompt? But it's vague. It doesn't provide any detail. It doesn't, it's completely open-ended. So another way to say that may be, I have a brain injury. I become overwhelmed by multiple tasks. I need to call my doctor, do laundry, and buy groceries today. Create a simple plan. That's a better prompt. The more prompting you give it specific to what you need, the better the response is going to be. Okay, next scenario. Is this a good prompt? I'm applying for disability benefits because of my brain injury. My social security number is 123456789. My Medicaid ID is NJ77839211. My home address is 123 Main Street, and my checking account number is 123456789. I have attached my medical records and bank statements. Please complete my disability application for me and tell me exactly what I should write so that I can get approved. Hopefully you guys are all screaming, no, don't do this, okay? Here are the mistakes, okay? And I'm sure you guys can identify some of the obvious ones. Social security number, never give. ID numbers for anything, never give. Address, bank account, medical records. But here, the bottom three are a little bit more subtle. So what that scenario did was it asked AI to make a legal decision. Okay. Please complete my disability application for me and tell me exactly what I should write so that I can get approved. That's a legal decision. Okay. um, asking AI to predict what's going to get them approved, and assuming AI is responsible for the outcome. The outcome is ultimately the user's responsibility. Okay, and that matters on a professional level. If, for instance, a physician is putting information into AI, de-identified information into AI, and looking for what is the best recommendation for a medication given these number of factors. Okay. AI comes up with some great recommendations, some really good evidence base around it that's verifiable, and makes a recommendation. The physician is still 100% responsible for that outcome. And that it's just that's the piece. It's really user responsibility, because like I say, the AI is going to tell you what you want to hear. So little bit of some judgment, and sometimes after a brain injury, judgment isn't always what it used to be. So again, very careful about the kind of prompts that you put in. Okay, so here's a more subtle example. I have a brain injury and I'm trying to complete my Medicaid renewal paperwork. I used Medicaid on purpose. I am beating up Medicaid today, but I am sure that many of you have had to fill out forms, and even as a provider, applying to be able to give to be a Medicaid provider is a nightmare. So I'm using these examples because I know you people that everybody has been there. Um, and that the forms AI can really help you with forms, but you have to know what to ask it. So there's my little spiel on Medicaid. I have trouble understanding the instructions and get overwhelmed by long forms. My Medicaid number is NJ77839211. Can you tell me whether I qualify for benefits and whether my application will be approved? I also need help understanding what documents I need to send. Okay, just we only have a few more minutes, but just kind of go through in your minds and think about what parts of this are good and what parts need improvement. Okay, so here were the good elements to this. Clearly identified the problem, put it in the context of a brain injury, explains the cognitive challenge that you as an individual might have, or me as a provider might have, and a specific goal. Okay, that was good. Bad stuff. Okay, again, that Medicaid number appears. We don't want that. Again, it's asking AI to determine eligibility, and it's asking AI to predict approval. You can't rely on the responses that you're going to get from that. Okay, so better. I have a brain injury and become overwhelmed by complicated paperwork. I'm completing a Medicaid renewal application and do not understand the instructions. Please explain the instructions in plain language and help me create a checklist of documents that I may need to gather. Okay, again, taking this example out of my personal repertoire in terms of trying to get through the nitty gritty of the insurances, you can actually just copy paste like a segment from an application and just paste it right into the chat. Please tell me what this means in plain language. That's something that now is actually went from being vague, oversharing information to something that might actually help you get through that application. Is that going to quote unquote dumb anybody down? No, it's going to save you a lot of headache. It's going to save you a lot of painstaking time. And then for some people may not do it at all. Some people may just say, okay, that's too much for me. I cannot get through this. So these are things that AI can really practically help with to actually improve, you know, things for you. Um, so let's see. Okay. So again, even better, I have a brain injury and become overwhelmed when I have to complete complicated paperwork. I'm working on a Medicaid renewal application. Please explain these instructions in plain language and help me create a simple checklist of the documents I may need. Do not determine whether I qualify for benefits. Instead, help me understand the process and identify questions I may need to ask Medicaid directly. That's a good, strong prompt. That takes a little bit of practice before you can get there. But every time you learn, okay? So what went well there? There was no identifying information. There was a clear goal. A specific challenge was described. You request explanation, you request organization, you maintain your own decision making, and you've understood the limits of AI. Just briefly on scams. AI itself is not a scam. However, scammers may use AI. Okay. So AI generated scams, these are things that aren't going to come to you through your AI, but they're going to come to you in terms of fake emails, fake texts, fake websites, fake customer support. We have all been there. Okay. Your red flags are any requests for money, offers to give you gift cards, anything requesting a password or banking information. And then the real experts know how to apply urgent pressure for you to act immediately. So always be listening for threats or promises that sound too extreme. And like I say, it's not going to come from the AI itself, but people can use AI to generate these kind of things in communications to you via text, that sort of thing. Um, okay, another a message that some people may have actually gotten this one. Important. Your Medicaid benefits are scheduled for termination. Click here immediately to verify your information and avoid loss of coverage. Okay. Why do so many people fall into this? The threat of losing a benefit is very emotional. It's very alarming. It's very triggering. And so people tend to respond, anybody tends to respond impulsively to this kind of thing. So you want to slow down. If anything, if all of your adrenaline starts flowing when you get one of these texts, that's your first sign. How does your stomach feel? To slow it down, contact the organization directly using an official phone number that you've looked up through another way. That right now is the best way to avoid things. Also, things like you see an advertisement on the internet. RII knows which cryptocurrencies will double next month. Members made or members may had 300% returns. Don't miss out. And then click the website. Okay. So then you get your options. You can do the basic membership for $99, all good promises. $499 for the premium, $2,000 for the elite. And this is really going to be like the next Bitcoin. Anything like that, beware. Okay. Scams work because they promise certainty in an uncertain world. Anything that talks about investments, any kind of approval for something that you're trying to get, health cures, legal advice. If it's attached to a payment, don't do it. Okay. So, can people overuse AI? Absolutely. We've talked about a number of ways to overuse AI in this talk, but AI really is meant to support your thinking, organize your information, and prepare you for important tasks that you have to take care of. Does not replace thinking, doesn't replace relationships, and it doesn't make major decisions alone, or it shouldn't. You're always in control. You should be the decider. So protect your information, verify important facts through a different mechanism, and use judgment just like everything else. Okay, so we're almost out of time. I wanted to leave time for questions. Here's some topics for the next thing, and let me stop sharing and let me just take some questions, including you can put into the chat anything that you would like to hear about in the next webinar.
Monique, we did have questions about using AI in email, which I thought we might address in the next session, but if you want to briefly just talk about AI and email, I know there's a lot of you can turn it on or off with your email for Gmail.
Yeah, so I do, so it doesn't automatically assess your email. There's usually a button on top that you can push that will either summarize an email for you, which can be a good thing, or it can help you write an email. I used that this morning, actually. Sometimes, navigating, I supervise a lot of people. And navigating situations is not always an easy thing. So when I find myself in a situation where I've got to respond to an email that I either need to be very politically correct in, or I really need to deliver a point concisely, compassionately, even if I'm like a little riled up, I will just I pressed on the assistant and I typed in exactly that. I typed in, please review this email. Help me formulate a compassionate response that will also help me to communicate the point that I'm trying to deliver. It generated it for me right away, took all the emotion out of it for me. I was able to paste it into my email and I sent it out. So, again, it's not, there's no information in there that would have, but it's right. It is in all of your, even now it's in our like HMH email, and we're actually encouraged to use it because everything is self-contained. So that's the important part too, is the more public. So a lot of the free access kinds of AIs, I trust that a little bit less than I do, like, for instance, a hospital AI, or, and I'm not encouraging everybody to go out and use a paid version, but if you're using an unpaid version, just add an extra layer of caution.
That's great. And just for sake of time, maybe one more question. Can you say with decisiveness that AI is not self-aware?
Yes. And I can say that with a lot of confidence because I've spent my career studying the brain, and particularly emotional components, intuitive components, right hemisphere functioning. AI is built on language recognition. Language recognition is about, it's a good, it's a it there's a we have a good part of our left hemisphere devoted to language recognition, but in terms of whole brain functioning, it's a percent. So it cannot do the things that us as humans can do. Now, that's all your language-based models, your chat GPT, things like that. Other things like, for instance, Neuralink, that is going to be a little bit more specific, and I don't know enough about Neuralink to talk about it, but I envision a time when possibly AI might be able to use facial recognition. It actually already can use facial recognition if you have that superior, sophisticated technology, to kind of infer your emotional state. It's still not going to give you the whole of human thinking. If any of you have heard the mythology that most humans only use 10% of their brain, that is a myth. When you're thinking, when you're remembering, if you think about your 10th birthday party, if any of you can remember that far back. You think about the smells, you think about the sights, you think about the feelings, you think about your friends that were there. You're basically activating a lot of different parts of your cortex. AI cannot do that yet. That was a really good question.
Yeah. Okay. And there are some other things that we will address in the next session, but for time, we are 1 minute past 1 o'clock, and I really want to take this time to thank you for that most informative presentation. And thank you for sharing your expertise. If your question was not answered today, you can email me at klaw, at BIANJ.org, and I will get your question answered, or we will address it in the next session. One final reminder, the post-webinar survey is in the chat. If you do want to receive your certificate of attendance, please fill out that survey. Thank you all again for attending, for your thoughtful questions and comments. We hope to see you at the next webinar on August 6th. This concludes today's webinar. Thank you so much.